What's a fact that sounds fake but is actually legit? That if you knock your tooth out and put it back in the socket, it will grow roots back and save the tooth. A manatee's vagina is the closest out of any other animal to being human-like, which explains why they have to be protected in Florida. If you clench your butthole when you're about to cry, it prevents you from crying. It works. Tried and true. And it is at this moment when a small group of people on their phone's computer simultaneously clenched their buttholes for no apparent reason. Saddam Hussein was given the key to the city of Detroit in 1980. Speaking of sounds, air is a terrible transmitter of sound. Because we hear through the air, we naturally think it's very effective. But gases are terrible at transmitting vibrations. Air gaps are actually a very common and effective tool in soundproofing as well. There is a polar bear jail in Churchill, Manitoba. Polar bears who get too close to the town and or attack townspeople are shot with tranquilizer darts, airlifted, and dropped off at the jail. Ike. They are released into the wild again a few days later. Saudi Arabia imports sand. Desert sand is bad for construction. Beach sand is better. So we leave the Sahara alone and destroy beaches around the world. Mostly, Koreans produce odorless sweat. Edit. Look up ABCC 11. The US Marshals are still looking for the 3 guys who escaped from Alcatraz in 1962. They just disappeared off the face of the earth. And no bodies washed up in San Francisco Bay or anywhere nearby. Despite the official investigation suggesting they drowned before they could reach drier land. The investigation into their escape can't officially end until they reach their 100th birthday. Komodo dragons can reproduce asexually. Edit. When humans fall, the Commodus shall rise. Having 6 fingers is actually a dominant trait. But the genes for it are so incredibly rare that pretty much no one has it. The state of Maine has more black bears than black people. Edit. 15,000 black people. 30,000 black bears. Pluto has not gone halfway around the sun since its discovery. A ton of people is only about 11 people. Just your mother. There have been over 2,000 nuclear bomb detonations. John Tyler. Born 1790, has 2 living grandchildren as of 2017. Not great-grandchildren. Just regular grandkids. I think he was in his 80s when he had a son, and his son was also pretty old when he had these 2. America is 3 people old. The best thing for you to do if you're stung by a tarantula hawk wasp is to lie down and scream. Edit. Laying down prevents you from falling over hurting yourself when you're in the throes of pain. And the screaming helps cope with the pain level. Nothing else is really going to help you. Excuse me, or what? Fungi are actually more closely related to animals than plants. Pineapples take about 2 years to grow. HD video has been around for over 20 years. Only became popular with consumers in the past 5-10 years. There is a point in the Pacific Ocean named Point Nemo, which is the furthest point from land. In fact, it is so far from land. The nearest humans are often astronauts in the International Space Station when it passes overhead. The ice orbits the Earth at a maximum of 416 km, while the nearest inhabited landmass to Point Nemo is over 700 kilometers away. That Netflix was founded a year before Google. The entire state of Wyoming only has 2 escalators. The most fatal surgery in history had a 300% mortality rate. Scale-wise, a speck of dust is halfway between a subatomic particle and the Earth. This post is probably the best place to spread actual lies. France lends power to Britain so they don't get power surges from boiling the kettle. Which happened several times in 2013 after a TV program ended. Your finger can feel microscopic things. So my wife is lying then. The Amazon forest is fertilized by the Sahara. Edit. Sahara. Not Saharan. Sahara not Sahara Desert because Reddit is a pain in my grammar ass. Edit 2. Eli 5 is as simple as wind. The phosphorus the Amazon needs to stay fertile travels through the wind. The 15-20 largest container ships in the world create more pollution than all of the cars in the world. The most expensive grocery store item on a per pound basis is saffron. It's about $5.000 pounds. More Vietnam vets killed themselves than died in the war. Harvard University is over 100 years older than the United States. Canada has a smaller population than California. A polar bear's liver contains enough vitamin A to kill a human if eaten. Nintendo was founded in 1889. There are more libraries in the US than McDonald's. I've never seen a library in a McDonald's. I think you might be onto something. The longest domestic flight in the world is in France, Paris to Réunion. Around the 1680s in France, it became fashionable to wear bandages around your butt in order to pretend that you had surgery done on it. King Louis had an anal fistula that needed to be operated on to fix. And when it was successful, people began faking it and going to surgeons even when they didn't have the condition. People who couldn't get it done just used bandages to mimic it. The surgeon who was in charge practiced for 6 months on over 70 people beforehand, none of whom had that condition. And even before doing that surgery practice, he attempted other remedies like special baths or drinks on another group, none of whom had that condition either. Apparently the only ones present for the surgery were the surgeon, 4 doctors, his war minister, or chancellor, don't recall the exact title, and his commoner mistress. His war minister held his hand for the duration of the surgery. For more fun facts like this, check out the podcast No Such Thing as a Fish. Great podcast. Really funny. And it's one of the highlights of my week. The Giza pyramids were built when mammoths still roamed the earth. By the time Queen Cleopatra took the throne, the Great Pyramids were already ancient, crumbling ruins. If you have $10 in your pocket and no debts. The entire Captain Planet cartoon was an all-star cast. It had Whoopi Goldberg, Jeff Goldblum, Tim Curry, Meg Ryan. Cheetahs can't actually roar but instead meow like regular house cats. You can't choke an owl. That sounds like a challenge. Otters carry a favorite stone in their pocket. The 4 largest US cities, by area, are in Alaska. There was no grass in dinosaur times. It just seems so strange because it's so ubiquitous today. Baby koalas eat their mother's poop. At its furthest away point, you can fit every planet in our solar system between Earth and the Moon. Humans have the largest peni in the primate order. Speak for yourself. Water is a bad conductor of electricity. Pure water absolutely is an insulator. Water is also really good at containing things that are good conductors of electricity, therefore most water, non-pure water, is a good conductor of electricity. I had a chem teacher show this off. It blew our 6th grade minds. She took a beaker of pure H20 and had this set up of a light bulb and had it plugged in. The wire ran down this plastic piece and then broke and then lead back up to another wire to the light bulb. She said I can't touch both contacts because I would die. Done. But if I take this water, and she then submerged the plastic piece and the connection into the beaker of water. And nothing happened. She even stuck her finger in the water. Then she took a beaker with tap water and the light bulb shined. We were just shocked. The world's largest desert isn't the Sahara. It's the entire continent of Antarctica. Deserts aren't measured by grains of sand or amount of camels. It's all about precipitation. And Antarctica takes the cake. The roughly 5 million square mile continent only gets about 8 inches of rain a year. You can get arrested in Alabama for attempting to communicate with extraterrestrials. Googleplex is such an absurdity huge number that if you wanted to try and write it out you'd need a tool that could imprint on subatomic particles. Also, there aren't enough subatomic particles in the universe to even write the number. A Googleplex has nothing on Graham's number, which would cause your head to collapse into a black hole if you knew it in its entirety. Or tree. 3. When you receive the wrong type of blood when given a blood transfusion, you can become overwhelmed with a feeling of dread like something bad is about to happen. A chihuahua is more closely related to a grizzly bear than to a hyena. If you shuffle a standard deck of cards, it is basically a mathematical impossibility that anyone has ever shuffled a deck of cards into the same order you just have. Ice cream sales are correlated with homicides, because heat makes people buy ice cream as well as kill each other. Harriet Tubman died the same year Rosa Parks was born. Wasabi is really hard to find, and most times the wasabi you're eating is horseradish with food coloring. Oxford University was founded before the Aztec Empire. There are more trees on Earth than there are in space stars in the Milky Way galaxy. This one's pretty obvious. 7 of the top 10 largest national parks are in Alaska, including all of the top 3, which are all larger than Connecticut by size. Atlanta is west of Detroit. A 2x4 lumber is actually 5x3. It's more complicated than that. It also depends upon the type of wood, what part of the country you are in, and what year it was milled. After the oil industry, the fashion industry is the next highest polluting industry on the planet. If you stacked enough elephants to reach the moon, the average human is just tall enough that if they hold themselves rigid and fall straight forward backward and strike a hard object with their skull, that they will have dealt themselves a lethal blow. Bill Clinton is a rapist. Simpsons paradox. Imagine Class A and Class B. Class A has 11 girls. 9 of them pass. Class A has 10 boys. 8 of them pass. Class B has 12 girls. 3 of them pass. Class B has 7 boys. 1 of them pass. In each class, girls performed better on average than boys. Yet overall, boys performed better on average than girls. Fun fact. This is literally how gerrymandering works. Vikings did in fact not have any horns on their helmets. That humans are 60% genetically similar to bananas. Polar bears have black skin and transparent hairs. You could get look at T-bone by sticking your head up a bull ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. Looks astonished I even said that. Said it before and I'll say it again. The largest manufacturer of tires in the world is Lego. The economy is doing great under President Trump. Marilyn Monroe and Queen Elizabeth LL were born only 10 days apart. Edit. Minnesota has 90,000 miles of shoreline, which is more than California, Florida and Hawaii all combined. Nigeria doesn't actually have a prince. Hold up. Using recycling bins is completely pointless because recyclables get sorted out of garbage anyway. So why have I been sorting the trash into whites and colors? Depends on where you live. No. This one is actually false. With 23 random people in a room, it seems weird. But that's because people automatically think that you would be comparing one person to 22 others. In fact, you are comparing each of the 23 people to 22 other people. If that makes any sense. The New York City metro area has a greater population than all of New York State. China used more concrete in 3 years than the US did in the 20th century. 27 US states have land that is farther north than the southernmost point of Canada, with 13 of them being completely north of the southernmost point of Canada. The most surprising is that California has land north of Canada, but New Jersey does not. Semicolon. This is my go-to weird fact. When it became apparent that it was incredibly difficult to harvest spider silk, which is prized for its strength, a string of silk the width of a pencil from some spiders can stop a jet mid-flight, scientists created spider-goat hybrids that produce the spider silk protein in their milk, which can then be refined into genuine spider silk. They are essentially goats with spider DNA, and the scientists in charge of them call them the spider goats. There are clips from documentaries about them on YouTube, and there are many articles on the topic elsewhere. There's a planet occupied solely by robots. Mars. More Americans believe they've seen a ghost than met a trans person. Kodak. The company destroyed by digital photography. Invented digital photography. Pirates are responsible for the U.S. never adopting the metric system. Could you elaborate? This one gets passed around commonly, but it's pretty amazing if you haven't seen it before. Suppose you had a sheet of paper that was large enough so that you could keep folding it in half over and over. The sheet is obviously very large in area, but it's just a humble 0.0039 inches in thickness. After about 7 folds, you are just around the thickness of a regular notebook. After 10, it'll be as thick as your hand. Nothing impressive. After 23 folds, you'd have a folded paper tower that's just about a km tall. Now we start to get interesting. After 30 folds, congrats, you're in space. Add another 12 folds to take you to 42, and you're ready to walk on the moon. After 51, you can touch the sun. With 81 folds, your paper tower is almost as thick as the Andromeda Galaxy, approximately 141,000 light years. 90 folds will get that paper tower as thick as the Virgo supercluster, contains about 100 galaxies. After 103 folds, you've broken free of the observable universe, approx 93 billion light years in diameter. Exponential growth is a hell of a thing. Every single star in the Milky Way orbits around a black hole located at the center of the galaxy. The introduction of metal helmets in World War I causes head injuries to increase, but they also caused head deaths to decrease at the same time. Ada Lovelace designed the first computer algorithm roughly 100 years before the first computer. For any given language, the most common word will occur 2x as often as the second most common word, 3x as often as the third most common word, and so on. It's called Zipf's law and it works. There are more white-tailed deer in the US now than at the time of first European contact. Tried to search this thread to see if this had been posted, but Reddit search sucks. Asparagus and urine. The genes that control a person's ability to produce smelly urine from asparagus, and the genes that control the ability to smell that distinct scent, are two different things. So it's entirely possible for a person to be able to make stinky asparagus but not know they are. Or it's possible for someone to be able to smell it from others, but not actually produce it themselves. Biology is wild. France and the Netherlands have a land border. The Pacific Ocean entrance to the Panama Canal is east of Miami. More people died in the 9/11 terrorist attack than the attack on Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December, 1941. That sounds pretty plausible. If you move south from Detroit, the first country you hit is Canada. Bill Clinton was adopted. Watermelons and bananas are berries but strawberries are not. They aren't straws either. There are dead wasps in figs. Similarly, you can say that figs are technically not a vegetarian food. This has become more properly known in the past few years, especially since Mythbusters covered it. But it's still my favorite. You are a contestant on the show, let's make a deal. Monty Hall has provided you with 3 doors. with a grand prize behind just one of them. You choose door number 2. Monty then reveals that door number 1 had nothing behind it. So the prize is definitely behind either door number 2 or door number 3. You are then given a chance to switch your answer. Do you switch? Most people won't switch, going with their gut instinct. After all, it's a 50/50 chance. Turns out, it's not actually a 50/50 chance. And your chance of winning is actually greater if you do switch doors. The majority of people have an above average number of arms. BuzzFeed must be doing research for clickbait again. Contrary to popular belief, Napoleon was actually average height and wasn't short for the time. He was 5 feet 6 and the average height of European men at the time was 5 feet 5 minus 5 feet 7 depending on which historical record you read. Wearing a seatbelt increases your chance of getting cancer, because you don't die in a car wreck first. If you took all your blood vessels out of your body and laid them end to end, you'd die. Cleopatra was born 2,500 years later than the creation of the pyramids, 2686 B.C. That places her time closer to Harambe's 1999 than the time of pyramids. RIP. Never forget. In most cases, your foot is the same length as your forearm. Strain hip flexor. Nope. Foot is a good inch shorter. Unless your goal was to trick me into checking. Fact. The largest egg in the world is laid by a shark. Fun fact. Charlie Chaplin once entered a Charlie Chaplin look-alike contest and came third. Dolphins sleep with one eye open, gripping their pillow tight. Cornflakes were invented to stop masturbation. Didn't work. There is enough water in one Great Lake, Lake Superior, to cover the entire landmass of North and South America in a foot of water. The first description of the female orgasm came from a nun. All mammals have the same type of bones, just in different configurations. This means that mammals like whales have legs. They are just small and dormant. There are birds called boobies. Great tits. Whales are more related to domestic cats than fish. Whales are mammals, after all. In Appalachia the people have water that's so polluted they drink Mountain Dew because it's healthier, and because of that they suffer from Mountain Dew mouth. The last ruling descendant of Genghis Khan ruled in Uzbekistan until 1920. The fact dinosaurs actually existed still trips me out. It sounds so fake thinking of giant monsters roaming the earth, but it happened and I'll never get over it. And the fact something like Megalodon was a thing. WTF even is Earth? How high are you? That this exact question has been posted to Ask Reddit 382 times in the past 6 months. Show your work. There are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth, and there are more atoms in a grain of sand than there are stars in the universe. Alaska is the most eastern and western state. The Sahara Desert actually alternates between desert and savanna roughly every 41,000 years. Meaning that modern humans left Africa when the Sahara was still a vast green savanna. For the average person, Aka not predisposed to mental illness such as schizophrenia, LSD, or acid, is really quite safe. It is borderline harmless when used responsibly. People are basically donut shaped. There is no solid barrier between our mouths and assholes. This is one head up donut. The Vatican City is the smallest country in the world, is ruled as an absolute monarchy with the Pope at its head, and is one of the most richest countries in the world per capita. There's less time in history between humans and T-Rex than T-Rex and Stegosaurus. High salt intake doesn't cause high blood pressure. All of Colorado has a higher elevation than all of Minnesota. Maine is the closest state to Africa. I bless the Maine down by Africa. If you cut a hole in a net, it will have less holes. In the US, the legislation which prevents the government from banning gay marriage was passed in 1868. Otters are pay and drown baby seals. Donald Trump is president. Cheeto man bad. It's illegal to hunt whales in Arizona. Despite being almost universally used for pain since 1955, we still don't actually know how Tylenol, acetaminophen, works. Actually, a lot of drugs are like that. We know they work but don't really know how or why. The average human has about one testicle. Deer can jump higher than an average 2-story house. Because houses can't jump. A human baby born underwater can live its entire lifetime submerged, without ever surfacing for air. Our technical is the truth. On average you will come in direct contact with 36 psychopaths in your life. Also, at any given time there are an estimated 50 psychopaths actively killing in the US. If you work any customer service job this number is drastically higher. Some people on Reddit have had sex. Scotland's national animal is a unicorn. There are something like 4x more homicides committed by people using knives in the US than there are by people using all types of rifles, including assault rifles, combined. Source. Most people have already met psychopaths and sociopaths in their lives, without really knowing which ones are crazy. Vikings discovered North America about 500 years before Columbus. 4 of the planet's 10 snowiest cities are in Japan. At number 1 it's Aomori with 792 meters. At number 2 it's Sapporo with 485 meters. At number 3 it's Toyama with 363 meters. And at number 8 it's Akita with 272 meters. In Arizona it's illegal to let your donkey sleep in a bathtub but it can sit in it. It's also illegal to have more than 3 unrelated women live in a house together or it's classified as a brothel. You can tell if a number is divisible by 3 if the sum of its digits is divisible by 3. 66% of the US's tax revenue comes from consumer spending. Beer wasn't considered an alcoholic beverage in Russia until 2013. If you find a rock on the ground that you believe is a meteorite, but turns out to be just a regular rock, it is called a meteorong. In 2016 a reality TV show actor was elected President of the United States. At one point in time Pepsi was the 6th largest military power in the world after it gained possession of a Soviet war fleet. Betty White is older than sliced bread. The Navajo Nation is larger than 10 states, US. 27. 413 miles to be exact. 999 kilometers. 1 out of 25 people have ASPD. Thanks Shane. Edit. Change sociopaths to ASPD which all sociopaths are but not all ASPD are sociopaths. They just have sociopathic tendencies. Also for those who like percentage and can't do the math. That's 4%. Fat is good for you. Wombat poops are cube shaped. I've seen wombat poop. That's a huge exaggeration. It's more like they've got gently sloping corners rather than being spherical or tube shaped. Polar bears have recently been migrating further south and mating with grizzly bears, creating a hybrid called Growler bears. They were separated for so long they took on different phenotypes, but they are distant enough to no longer be able to mate and create viable offspring. Radiolab just did an update on that. Turns out all the hybrid bears are all descended from one single female polar bear. There's only a handful of them, and they might just die off. Polar bears are breeding with grizzly bears is how it was originally reported. But it's more like a polar bear did a weird thing and mated with a grizzly. There's some hybrids running around, but they're definitely not the new normal. If the sun were to go supernova, The number of photons that would reach your eye would be 9 orders of magnitude, 1 billion times, higher than a hydrogen bomb detonated against your eye. I don't like either of those options. The guy that made Family Guy was supposed to get on the plane that crashed into one of the towers. But he was late. Marky Mark also claims to have booked on that same plane as well as one of the Backstreet Boys. Side note. I've never once found myself on an airplane with even a single celebrity. How crazy would it be to find yourself on a plane with All 3? Then die in a crash.